from the West. That's too disciplined, too tedious.
We need help.
We need help.
Your help in this case, for example.
I just speed it up. Same result. That's like walking to Mar del Plata. I prefer the airplane, so we can get there quickly.
And cells, do cells have any kind of consciousness or memory? Are cells other parts of this kind of different shapes we can use?
Cells of our body,
Yeah.
I think, do have consciousness in the sense that there may be a cellular memory. It doesn't explain past lives completely, but we know from work with transplant, for example, that feelings and other sensitivities can be transmitted. We know from certain work with worms that memories can be transmitted through cellular processes, transplanting. For example, in heart transplants, you see sometimes the recipient taking on some of the characteristics of the donor. For example, someone who has never drunk beer, doesn't like beer, then has a transplant and suddenly develops a taste for beer, and the donor loves beer. That kind of thing you see a lot of, and you know that this is a form of cellular transfer of some sort of sensitivity or memory. But with past lives it's more complicated, because so many times people who have died as children or young, not having passed on any genetic material, they didn't have any children, but they remember the lifetime as a child. So if you remember a lifetime, for example, and I'm making this up, I'm not a psychic telling you, where you died when you were 5 years old in Russia in the 18th century. You didn't have any children, you were only 5 years old. But now you remember in detail that life, what happened, this facts about Russia and your parents, and things like that. That's not genetic. You don't have a genetic link to that little boy a couple of centuries ago in Russia. So we know that it's more than genetic transmission.
And do we carry illness and sickness from one life to another one? Oh, I mean, when we have when we are ill, does that come from other lives that we have to pass through them?
Sometimes. It's a very interesting question. I'm actually thinking about that too, because certainly for psychological problems, yes. I've seen that a lot. Someone is thrown off a castle wall in the 15th century, and now they have a fear of heights. Catherine drowned, and she has a fear of gagging or choking. And she also wound up having a fear of water that I didn't even know about. So we bring those symptoms or illnesses, anxieties, depression, with us. Vulnerabilities. But then I was thinking, well, what about physical diseases like cancer or something like that? I know we bring pain with us. Absolutely. But, for example, I was seeing a radiologist, a doctor in my hospital, who had terrible back pain for years. But he went to orthopedic surgeons and chiropractic physicians and others with no relief. And he had to take medicine because the pain was severe, but he did not like taking the medicine because it made him tired and fuzzy. His mind wasn't sharp. When we did a regression, he found himself as a soldier, one soldier, in a battlefield of thousands in the Middle Ages, and he was speared in the back. That's how he died in that life. And when he remembered that, his back pain disappeared. It doesn't prove the lifetime, but the pain disappeared. It changed his life completely. So that...
And can we heal illness in that way?
Yes,
that's concrete illness.
Concretely. And then I was thinking about cancers, for that maybe we bring a vulnerability, or substance abuse. Did you use alcohol in England in the 14th century to solve your problems and other times, and are you bringing that pattern forward into this life? Yes, people do that too. Not so much the illness as the vulnerability to the illness. And I find, yes, this technique does help a great deal with physical illnesses as well. All kinds. Asthma, and you found that you died in a fire. in whenever, and in the smoke inhalation, and that's why the breathing problems. Not all cases of asthma, but some. And I remember a patient I had from England whose asthma got much better when we found this cause in a fire several centuries ago in a past life. So I do think physical illnesses are also brought over, or the vulnerability, or the pattern. And through awareness, through understanding, we can solve those problems. We can heal those symptoms. There's also, boy, the understanding about death, that it's not what we think it is, that we're actually immortal because we're souls, spiritual beings. There's a beautiful quote from a Christian mystic whose name is Teilhard de Chardin. In English, it goes like this, because it has a nuance in it. He said, "We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience." I love that quote because it captures the essence of our existence.
We go on in a minute. Thank you, Brian. Ya volvemos con el Dr. Brian Weiss.